Hello, my name is Ryan Green, and my guest today is Scott Moore. Scott is the founder and CEO of Covalent Partners, a boutique marketing consultancy centered around innovation and strategic partnerships. In his illustrious career, he has served as the CMO of Best Buy Mobile and Wynn Resorts, as well as an advisor for several venture capital firms. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. Great to see you.
Good to see you too. So, this week we're going to talk about innovation in marketing. At this point, the word innovation is basically a buzzword in business. It's a top priority for many organizations, probably propelled by a fear of becoming the next blockbuster, right? I feel like the MBA programs have instilled a healthy fear of that specific company to businesses for some reason. But innovation really is a broad term. It means a lot of different things to a lot of different people and to a lot of different organizations. So, Scott, how do you define the word innovation as it pertains to marketing?
I think innovation is the act of creative problem solving, kind of in two directions. We refer to them as the two gets. You are seeing a moment where your team is getting stuck against an entrenched problem, and they're genuinely stuck. Like this happens to all of us, writers, creators, problem solvers, plumbers, people get stuck. When you get stuck, you need one sort of external observation to be like, hey, there's a different way to see that, or is that like this? It's the heart of ingenuity and American engineering is it's about problems that are trenched and you get stuck. The other get is called getting after it, which is equally important. And to your blockbuster reference, there's a lot of things they needed to get after. They were so focused on their core business and all the problems where they were getting stuck with movie distribution, negotiating with the studios. They failed to get after a pretty important thing called e-commerce, the internet. Pick a topic, and the people who ran Blockbuster were not dumb. I don't think they're any dumber than any of us. But you need to keep those two things in balance in terms of the two kinds of problems you're going to get after. You're going to get after something new that really you need to think about, and it's outside, it's in your wheelhouse, but not on your to-do list, or your team getting stuck. And so that's where we focus.
So, your definition of innovation is both ideating, thinking, the light bulb moment, the things that people may traditionally think about innovation, but it's also getting it done, moving it forward, the application of an idea to turn that into practice, to have a minimal viable product, and to start testing and iterating on it. Those things have to happen concurrently to some degree for innovation to work. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. If you look at the history of innovation, I mean, not that I'm an expert, but it all spun
Well, I
out of
brought
the
you on
state.
as an expert today, so
Well, you're getting
pretend.
my practitioner's point of view. It all spun out of Stanford Design School in the 60s or 70s. IDEO, in many ways, um, made it famous. And you've got great brands like Fahrenheit 212 and Frog, and you name them, who've continued to press the edge of what can be in education, in innovation. When I think about it, again, I think my definition is the act of solving a problem creatively. That's it. It's not really to overcomplicate what it is. How to do it is a much bigger challenge, and I think that stems from I think it's Rene Descartes or somebody whoever created the scientific method. I think it's someone like that, like hundreds of years ago, where you could apply logic and discipline to improve outcomes. That all stems back to some of the great philosophers. And humans' desire for certainty just makes you want to control, minimize distraction, and achieve. And the problem with creativity and an innovative thought is you need that blend of art and science. So that's not new. I think our desire for a method to just processize everything, which is what's happening everywhere in the economy, everywhere in marketing, that's just not enough. If it was as easy as a spreadsheet, like it would be done. It's that simple. So you have to think about, okay, sure, you can bring science to the problems or opportunities, but you have to bring some art and creativity. And so we talk a lot about kind of the art within the science. And so I think that is really what it's about. I always joke, say you and I could write a movie about a boy who failed out of school in Boston and was a plumber, what do you like a janitor at MIT, And I'm sure if we followed the script writing discipline, we could pump out a script and it'd be okay. Except, we could follow it to a T. Every single step, every single time, the 7 edits you need, the 14 producers you're supposed to show it to, and it would kind of be mediocre, probably at best. Now stick in 2 artists named Matt and Ben, who followed a fairly similar process as I understand it. Their art within that science created a Academy Award winning script. And sometimes it's easier to talk in metaphors, but I think that's true. When you look at where and when great ideas come together, there's some discipline, there's some structured thinking, but there's some art that lives within that allows it to push to a brand new place. And then to your last point, I think back to marketing and agencies always overvalue the idea. Oh my God, it's the best idea ever. And brands and companies always overvalue the execution. Well, we know how to get it done. The biggest, best ideas are the union of the two.
No, that's a great metaphor with Goodwill Hunting. Well, we can take that um, any day of the week
Great
here.
movie. Great movie. How
Great
do you like
movie.
that Apples team?
I mean, maybe that ages us in the old millennial Gen X cohort a little bit, but I'll take it.
We could do this. We could do the same thing with Taylor Swift. There's a lot of women who can write songs following the songwriter's method, and can play a guitar. They could follow it to a T. They could even work with Big Machine Records and that whole team.
Yeah.
It's not the same. The artist themselves, the creator themselves, that does matter.
What conditions need to exist for a company to innovate in a productive, profitable way? How do brands still contend and compete with innovation as a weapon when there's constraints?
Sure. I was at Best Buy for many years, and it remains a remarkable company. It's probably the one true independent category specialist that survived the Amazon onslaught in commerce.
Yeah.
Anyways, it was also historically just an incredibly innovative company and willing to take risks. You walk into a Fortune 50 company, you know what the environment's supposed to feel like. Staid, old. They can drop as many, you know, umbrellas in the lobby as they want, and it's just not cool. Best Buy really thought through how do you create new growth, how do you stay on the edge the entire time I was there. One of the frames we use, which I support, is when you look at a problem or an opportunity that needs proper innovation, is you need to look at it through 3 lenses. The first lens is technically, okay, have we framed up this problem as simply as possible? And I think that's really key. It's like in marketing. If you don't have a good creative brief, the odds you're going to get to great work, they just go down. So one is technically, have you defined the problem in a crisp, simple way that is accurate? So many teams don't do that work. They can look at CAGRs, they can look at red lines on their P&Ls and be like, we got to fix it. Nope. Have you defined the precise problem? So first thing's technical. Second thing is political. And this is critical because it's not easy to suss out. It's not easy to, if you're the vendor partner or you're the agency. But is there true political support at a high level in the organization to get this unstuck or get after it? Is there someone who is waking up, covering it, creating air support, allowing for the messy parts, and saying, no, they're going to get this done? I mean, we had to have political support on both sides of the Atlantic to give us the time and space to make this awesome. And that's how we built, $1 billion of EVA that wasn't there before. The last thing is kind of cultural, which is how are you handling those cultural dynamics within the team to allow these things to flourish, noting that there will be a lot of challenge between the incumbent thinking and the new thinking. And so those are the 3 things: technical, political, cultural. Finally, I would say, sort of since leaving big company land and spending more time working with startups, I've been in a venture-backed startup myself. I've started a company. I participated in an accelerator. I advise lots of startups. And I do think there's a lot to be learned from sort of venture studios, accelerators, these sorts of programs who are lean startup. Those principles on the scientific side can be really helpful because it's how tight are you on the problem? Is it your problem that you think of or a customer's problem? That's really key. Have you defined your ideal customer? And have you talked to them? And is it really a burning platform question for them? Are they freaked out about it? The next is what tools you're bringing to bear. Are you getting your MVP into cycle as cheaply as possible, as quickly as possible, with as many iterations as possible, with some directionality towards the future? The three big ones, technical, political, cultural, and then are you adapting and pulling in tools from the people who are doing the biggest innovations today? And I can't speak to like whatever the government's doing or whatever Pfizer's doing, but they're taking risks and they're looking for odd connections of things that didn't exist before to sort of light up these new ideas. And then you can, there's someone wrote a book called the 10 Types of Innovation. You can innovate many different ways at a brand level, product level. We usually get focused on product, business model, distribution, pick a topic, process innovation. All these things can lead into taking a fresh look at your assets, those within the bounds of your business, and on the other side, and putting them together, recombining them in a new way.
So you brought up technical, political, and cultural, and I feel like the synergy between those three areas really comes down to leadership, right? Like when you say political and giving airspace for innovation to live, in particular in an environment where there needs to be quick returns, is leadership a prerequisite for large companies to be able to innovate?
No, it's a great question. I don't think there's a clean answer. There's not an ABC. If we just did ABC, we'd always get the D, and that's life. That's just the way things are. I think when you take that question, you have to ask another couple of questions, which is what kind of innovation are we talking about? Is it truly transformatively big, never been done before innovation? It's very hard to do that within the bounds of your own four walls. You're just nothing is aligned for that to work. If it's smaller in closer, if you think of like just innovating on the core, constant Kaizen, everyday improvement as the inner circle, next thing around kind of adjacent innovations that's easier for teams to get their heads around, but they're still not great. I think they need help. Truly transformative, I think you need outside help because you just don't think right. A lot of it comes down to incentives and behaviors. If you look at what a team is incented to do, it's typically deliver this year's plan in some way, shape, or fashion. Innovation and big ideas take time. They take tests. They take all these things. And very few teams are incented to go big and fail a couple times along the way. Incentives play a huge role both in the short term and in the long term. So I think the further you go out towards transformative innovation, I think the returns on outside help. Closer in, it depends upon the type of the problem. Now you just need help. Like some of the most innovative people I know, they still call me like, "Hey, I'm stuck. Can you just let me run this by you?" Now, some of those things are paid big, huge NSF grant style innovative projects. Others are like, I need an outside lens, and that's another role. And so that awareness is important. Incentives are key, both as I described, but also in terms of who are the people, what are they incented to do right now. Also, over the long term, which I'm a big fan of, equity stakes or outsized returns for people who take the risk to do something big and different. Now, that's how venture works. It can also work in large companies, but they have to, like, there's a period I did not take any Best Buy stock at all. That is counterintuitive to any exec, but we were all believed in this idea, and we approach the whole situation very differently, and we're aligned to deliver over a 5-year period, not over a 5-month period.
You recently wrote an article about the M in the CMO title, and you said that M could certainly be marketing, as it traditionally is, but it could be media, it could be MarTech, it could be messaging. I came to you for an innovative idea, and you brought Chief Media Officer to me, which is the title that I gave myself at my one-person company. So
you promoted yourself. I always appreciate that.
It was an easy call. But how do you see the different M's working with each other, and why do businesses need potentially different leads for each of those functions, and how do you incentivize anyone in your marketing ecosystem to be moving in the direction that's best for the brand and not necessarily just what's best for the individual?
So that thought piece really, I've got a lot of friends who are seeking advice on, because I do some coaching as well, and they're like, should I explore being a fractional CMO? And my reflections upon looking at that market, and I've done that as well. My big question on that, it gets back to some of this earlier stuff. Do you know what problem you're solving? And that's probably the best role you can play for the hiring partner. It's like, do you really know what you want here? Saying I need a fractional CMO could lead to me, full stack CMO, let it scale, $1 billion, all those big things, or it could be you built a company to 50 million from nothing, or it could be an intern on my team. Hey, I was a social media expert. I'm a growth hacker. All of us can hang our hat as a fractional CMO. Very rarely do brands say, like, wait, what kind of so this is much more functional as compared to the big macro innovation topic we're having. It's like, oh, do you need the full stack guy? Because it's complexity. That means manage a CEO, work with them on the board issues, figure out strategy and action. That's a complicated job, and you just need some experience before you can do all that. A lot of times I see people needing actually a chief media officer, which is what we talked about. Is the deeper we got into your business, the more I realized, hey, half the time people don't understand how modern digital marketing works from a media investment perspective. Everyone thinks you drop some fun thing on TikTok and it automatically goes viral. For brands, that's not true. You have to play, figure out, find what's getting the heat, invest dollars behind what's working. You have to do it well. If you are so fortunate to work in television, you have to think about addressable TV. There's so many things that have emerged across that media landscape this last 15 years. You need an expert. And sometimes that's the sole problem. Everyone has some sort of MarTech problem because that's just true. Like nothing works perfectly, period. And so you might need someone who's got a little more technical expertise. And then even there's still some stuff we still get called on, like classic, what's my positioning? What should my message be? How do I move upstream and win the hearts and minds of my consumers? That's a chief messaging officer for all. I mean, no one would ever call that. That's a little bit classic to the 1980s CMO. I think incentives should be aligned to what job you're trying to get done. I mean, so much of this stuff, and everyone, what I think is awesome, what's great now is everyone in the world talks about a jobs to be done segmentation, and they can tell you the McDonald's milkshake story. And that's about where it ends. And then a lot of times this thought gets slapped over a traditional segmentation, and they've lost the opportunity for magic. So much in innovation, not necessarily in marketing, in innovation, stems back to Clayton Christensen, the Harvard professor, God rest his soul, and the innovator's dilemma. And I think if I had one thing to tell anyone, I'd be like, hey, go read that book. And go just like take your time, work your way through it, and think about the little spaces and places where you can start framing up problems cleanly, applying some art and some science, then some art, and going into defining what's the job that this problem, product, brand, whatever can do for the customer in a brand new way. And yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate to work with a couple groups. I'm a entrepreneur in residence at the University of Chicago in a program called RISK, which is Radical Innovation for Social Change. So this is under two remarkable leaders. One is Jeff Sieverts, who's a peer of mine at Best Buy, tremendous thinker. He and I actually think really well together because you have the perfect left brain, right brain combination. I think that's great. The other is Steve Levitt, who's known for Freakonomics and is a world-class professor at a world-class econ department. And Jeff worked directly with Clayton Christensen in grad school. I also work with High Alpha Innovation. The people who worked there also, they worked with Clay's, his consultancy, which is called InnoSight. And these are people who bring a very structured way of thinking, what's the job to be done, but also value the truth that, like, yeah, you know what? I mean, my most recent conversations are like, all right, a blue sky innovation is pretty hard to just start from scratch, like drop two molecules together and hope they bond. Like, that's not a good plan. You need to have some clarity. You have to have the room for epiphanies, but you can't over rely on epiphanies. And honestly, half the time now, if you look at what's happening in venture, just if you and I were to start a company, if we just showed up and said, yeah, we have Pepsi as our first, we have an LOI with Pepsi for the first 12 months for 100K. That company's going to get funded 50 times faster than, well, we have this idea about the new marketing, whatever it is. And like, well, prove it. Like, well, we got someone to pay us 5K. Like, no one cares about 5K.
Yeah, maybe that kind of goes back to the original discussion that we were having around the ideation versus the execution of innovation. It's a lot, and the pressure that innovators have within large companies that have shorter runways and tighter bottom lines. It's a lot easier to get funded when you actually have sold your idea to and have gotten money coming in. So sales actually is an important part of the practicality of bringing innovative ideas to life too.
Sure, at the right time, not to interrupt, but I mean, at the right time. Also, if you're putting this and you have to deliver a big nut too soon, it can just totally slide. You can't be out there innovating for innovation's sake. We don't need, the world does not need another sticky note exercise. Not particularly anti 3M. I lived in Minnesota for many, many years. I love it, but there's so many things about that innovation process that are broken that just because we have an offsite, just because we named some problems and we were facilitated well, that we can sticky note our way to success. Like, I don't think Steve Jobs put together the thought of the iPhone off a sticky note exercise. Pretty sure that didn't happen.
I know one kind of practical area that you've focused on, increasing the marketing world's innovation on has been brand to brand collaborations. How have collaborations evolved since you started focusing on that space, and why are they still important today?
Great question. Yeah, that was not, I mean, I've done all sorts of things. Partnerships was not I didn't think partnerships was my bailiwick over the years, but it turns out being a retail marketer, our big budgets that we throw around, half of it's our money, half of it's someone else's. We're constantly working in partnership with, pick a brand, Microsoft, Sony, Apple, Google, Otterbox, Beats as it was getting started. Like it was always working together. And so I learned a lot about those dynamics in terms of framing things up. So I think partnerships have always mattered. It's a great way to extend your impact. It's a great way to clarify who your brand is, what you bring to the table, and what someone else can do. But the reason I really focus on brand to brand partnerships, influencers have exploded, and they should. It's a different way to do discovery today. But the problem with influencers, and they'll continue to, we paid for them, not anti-influencer, macro, micro, doesn't matter. But you're hiring them to do a job. They can be finicky and risky. When you partner with another brand, the equities are so clear. When Tiffany and Nike got together, everyone was like, okay, I get it. It's interesting, and it captured my attention. And this is the big thought, which is for all the expertise, verticalization, optimization, personalization, anythingization, it's really hard to break through right now. Period. There's so many messages. I mean, when I was at Best Buy, we flipped our spend to digital from 30/70 to 70/30 digital. And I think 2012, that's a decade ago. That's more than a decade ago. So we were under a lot of pressure. Fighting the biggest, baddest company in the world gets you in shape fast. We're under pressure, but like we got all those gains or the team got all those gains for 5-7 years because we were ahead of the pack. Now, if your competitors are not using these tactics, you're eating them. You have to do this. So consumers are just used to the onslaught. What breaks through? Conceptually arresting thoughts. Nike, Tiffany. My original epiphany was like, why does a big, bald, Shrek-looking guy from Minnesota know that Clinique and Crayola did a collab? Like, I should not know that. Neither should you, really. Maybe you do use more Clinique product than me. But the point is, why should I know that? I should not. But I did because the concept, I'm like, oh, what's that? It caught my attention. The same way a great ad
I
did
knew
in the
about
80s.
that collab because you told me about that collab. That was not part into to this skin down here.
All right. I think things, especially for the millennials, Gen Z, if you were coming of age as a Gen Xer, you wanted a Nike or an Adidas to show you a tribal that badge value. We talked a lot about badge value in marketing in the 80s and 90s. Now it's like, oh, how am I different, unique, big, cool, whatever. Identity doesn't change. People still want to be recognized and loved and feel cool. That's a human need. How it happens is different. You want to be wearing the latest collab from your latest brand. And so I would say in the end, to answer the question, they're increasing in relevance. They are shape shifting in terms of the size and scope. Like the one we did with Apple Fitness Plus and Anytime Fitness could not be more strategic. Like, what does Anytime Fitness have? Gyms. What does Apple Fitness Plus have? world-class digital content. Put them together, better for the consumer, better for both brands, fundamentally better. And then you've got other fun little ones that catch attention. Like we didn't do this one, but that's one I love. We work with Great Clips, and the Super Bowl they did a thing around helmet hair and mullets for with Kawasaki, right? Like it was fun, and it got huge play.
So you just use the word fun, and I think that's why brain to brain collaborations work because they're fun. There's less fun in this world than there has been post pandemic. People are lonely, they're sad, they're not going out of their house. Fun is a differentiator, oddly enough. And I think brand to brand collaborations, because they're novel, work.
I know. I think it's certainly a part of it. Yeah, for sure. No, no, yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I think so much of this. Rob White was the great, so one of the people who brought account planning to the U.S. When I first got in the business, and he was constantly looking at psychology. Bruce Tate, these really big thinkers, and they're like, in the end, a lot of it's about understanding fundamental human dynamics, clarifying problems and opportunities, creativity to bring it to life. I just think now it's not just a creative execution in advertising or campaign theme. It's bigger. It bleeds into product. It bleeds into experience. And just because we're on a collab pin, like it's when you do a collab, as I said before, you learn a lot about your brand. You have to really clarify what you stand for and see what you're bringing to bear. And then you can share equities so much more efficiently with a grown up. Influencers, some are grown ups, some are not grown ups. And that's the risk. Even grown-ups can, bad things happen, and your brand suddenly tied into some scandal that you had no part of. Coca-Cola will have some sort of scandal, but it's not going to be the same one as a celebrity influencer who was thrown in jail.
It's not going to be Subway, if that's what you're referring to. Although Coca Cola's had their own. Uh,
Sure, I mean all brands have their problems, but it's clear, it's clean. They have audiences, they have fans, they have leverageable everything.
what is something that you've changed your mind about since you started in marketing?
It's still hard. Like the thing about strategy is it has to be right. The problem is if your strategy is right, that doesn't mean you win because you have to execute it, right? Like execution does matter, period, in any across any vector. I think when I started in marketing, we were still very much in the tell phase of how we thought about our consumers. Let me tell you something. It's sometimes like me, the guy who just goes on and on and on. Like we would just be quiet. Talk, 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 tell. And there's a professor out of Kellogg, whose name's escaping me right now, who basically said, look, this is an old thought, but it's hard to execute. It anticipated all of this influencer stuff. He was like, look, you need to listen to your customers. You need to be able to tell some things to customers, but then you need to co-create with customers. And so co-creation is another one of these buzzwords like innovation that has kind of fallen, into the glop. I think if you look at McKinsey, they'd say, hey, the global trends are ubiquitous connectivity, proliferation of devices, empowered consumer plus. Okay, so those things happen. That didn't. I started in marketing as the internet was waking up. Now consumers are empowered and they want to touch and engage and be part of brand communities and brand identity in a very different way. And so the power shifted. And I think some brands get it, some don't. I'm not saying I've got it cracked, but hey, how do I simplify this down and tell them something was very much the main thing. What's a creative way to explain this? And now it's like, oh no, how can I engage these brands in a new way? One of my favorite brands, probably ever. Like you look at Liquid Death. That's a pretty simple product. It's a can, it's a water,
It's a can of
it's
water.
good, tasty water. Has a point of view on the environment, and has a point of view on fun. And ripping, I mean, it makes sense those guys came from Crispin. Like Crispin was some of the most amazingly creative people I ever met in my life. And that's amazing. And people identify when you hold your Liquid Death up, it says, I'm cool. I don't care. I respect a little skate culture. I'm not afraid. This tastes good. I don't have to be drinking or drugging or anything else like that. Like they're just on fire. And it's not surprising to me. Like what is one of their fundamentally most important marketing strategies? Who are we collabing with this month? this month, not this year, not what's the big thing, not that we have it offsite, did we sticky note it? Like, hey, how are we going to get billions of impressions right now? And I think it's a signal of I think they're one of the top marketers in the world right now. And they have those TP things. They've technically framed up an opportunity. Politically, they're like, we are what we are. It's the Popeye rule. They used to say at Fallon, Popeye, I am what I am. The liquid death is what it is. And then culturally, they're engaging in a much broader way. I'm using now the not internal company culture, but the culture writ large. They're engaged with culture in the biggest possible ways. They'll partner with anyone if it's idea driven. Back to art within the science, back to being structured thinkers who can integrate other things. I think I'm becoming a bigger fan of, this is going to sound silly. It's either going to be like, God, that guy's smart, or isn't that duh? But I think too much strategy is actually not idea driven. It's deductive. Deductive. The way we wrote our PowerPoints, the way we did our Excel spreadsheets to find out how much money we made. Deductive down. One of the things I learned from Hubert Joly at Best Buy, he's brilliant. He got strategy and execution probably better than anyone I've seen, and under the utmost pressure, which just made it even more incredible. But he was inductive too. Like he had done the work on the macro, but he always had a thought that he was driving towards, and he was amenable. I think McKinsey works this way a lot. Like inductively, what do you think? Okay, let's reject that thought rather than do 7 million conjoints on what the product should be or shouldn't be, or any segmentation or market studies or how big's the kegger. Don't work down from the opportunity logistically. Come to a concept that can be confirmed, rejected, or enhanced. That can work in big companies. That is a lot of what I saw there. That is what I did in venture and have done in venture. And I'm not an accomplished venture. My company died, which is part of it. It's the old creative wins of destruction. Like, you got to create stuff. It's got to break. Good stuff's got to win. All that stuff. I think there's a huge opportunity. Like, wait, what's the notion here? What's the idea? Okay, how do we share that with Ryan and get some? How many times have I sent you a proposal or a piece of paper? I'm like, what do you think of this? And I want my early ideas to have their asses kicked by smart people. And I think that's a big piece of it. An idea-driven strategy, an idea-driven approach versus, well, we've got all the factors, we got forces, we got factors, we put them on the sticky notes. It is actually not a democracy. I don't really, if you're on my teams, I did those, of course. But like, I'm curious to see what people voted about, but their ass is not on the line. The lead team is. And so I have more information. I don't go with the number one vote getting sticky note thing. That's input to me, but it's not the decision.
Well, I don't think you're dissing 3M because of their creation of the sticky note. I don't think you're dissing their innovative
I'm coming for you,
Maybe you are.
3M.
If you want to,
I know you got a new healthcare division. Probably came out of a sticky note, actually. No, I'm just kidding.
could have. Go back to Liquid Death. That's such a gold standard heartthrob for marketers right now. Probably them and like Dude Wipes. I feel like I see quite a bit. Two brands that took toilet paper and water, right? Pretty basic necessities, and were able to put a brand and an ethos onto them. I wonder if those are the exceptions to the rule, though. At some level, recently, it feels like most innovation is in like logistics. It's really in maybe product, but not so much in like brand and marketing. If you listen to like a Scott Galloway talk recently on the Uncensored CMO podcast, he kind of thinks branding is going on the wayside. Are there going to be more companies like Liquid Death that are defined by their brand and their attitude and their fun, or are there going to be more brands like Amazon who really just put their logo up in places and are more innovating on the delivery of the product, not really on marketing aspects?
That's a great question. I am a brand guy. I don't know Galloway. Well, he's obviously remarkable. I think we're at an era where actually we've been optimized to death. Process optimization, like the larger companies I work in, all the strategists and connectors are gone from those companies because we're optimized down to what's your job? Are you the growth hacker? What's your job? Are you the assistant? Whoever. Can you respond fast enough to social media? A lot of teams have trouble staging their stories that can breakthrough is still the biggest thing. And if it's
Yeah.
breakthrough because of media innovation, and you actually caught me 5 minutes from now as I'm making my coffee, well, good on you. I got nothing problem. But that's a tactical innovation. The product still has to capture my imagination. I still need to be identified with it. And so I mean, I'm going to come down on the side of that. Period. I think there's a big problem across marketing right now, in particular, um, where we've optimized to death. I mean, I built personalization. Me, not just me, our team, the whole Best Buy team. We were world class at that stuff super early, and it's like, sure, I can send. I replaced, or we, I keep saying I. We replaced $100 million media cut with 100 million incremental impressions through our own customers. That was strategic. That worked. Did the Best Buy brand, did we deliver our numbers? Yes. Was there more brand love in the end? Y'all ask you, you're the consumer. You're like, oh my God, I love Best Buy more. I mean, that it's so it's both brand. I think Amazon as a company I love. I used to hate them because that was my job. Hate them. Now they're the one of the companies I respect most because they do all sorts of innovation. I think their PRFAQ method is about the best scale tool I see for managing innovation. If I had another big job, I'd be implementing that. We have a version of it we use at Covalent. Um, and what's ironic about that is, sure, they changed the world. Not just because you can get anything. It's the one click. They shifted, like, if I'm a buyer at GE, I'm a buyer of GE turbines. I pretty much I'm the consumer. I don't buy turbines like plane manufacturers, maybe Delta. I want to buy it with one click. I'd like the turbine to show up the next day at my doorstep. Like, they've just changed everything. Like, that's how we expect it to work. It actually works. So there's all that. But hold on, wait a minute. Who are the biggest advertisers in the world right now? Amazon, Google, Microsoft. Like, they're using, Amazon, it means everything. It's Amazon Prime they're advertising, Amazon um, Studios, all their product there. Amazon's all over the old traditional stuff because they know they need brand awareness has to be a certain high if you're in certain categories. Top of mind awareness. You have to be front and center so you don't get squeezed out. Like, it's really interesting. And there's no like simple answer here, like, 20% brand plus 30% process innovation. But there's no formula. You need to have a point of view. So anyway, but I love those guys.
Amazon's also an ad network, so they're not only are
Quite
they
profitable
spending
one.
money on advertising, but they're probably profitable, right, on the advertising ecosystem that they've built, allowing them to maybe oversaturate their variety of brands to consumers. But I want to go back to one point you were making about that we're over optimized. That's a point that Rory Sutherland from Ogilvy in the UK has made. I think on the Rick Rubin podcast. Oddly enough, Rick Rubin had a marketer on once, and his point was that basically programmatic and social, their algorithm decides within 5 minutes if an ad is good or not, and that we haven't given enough space for creatives to even be able to see if something was a salient with an audience because the algorithm
Yeah.
had a preconceived notion. Almost the same way that, like, there's arguments that AI is biased because of it's always looking in the past. The algorithm basically is also looking in the past as well. So his argument, and one that I think is at least substantial enough for consideration, is that in particular as it relates to creative, that we need to give more breath, more time, and not be focused on these micro optimizations because we're not necessarily able to show something that has breakthrough impact because the algorithm may not know that that's breakthrough because it's only analyzing
Right.
backward.
It's fundamentally backward looking. Yeah. Yeah. Again, we're back to old Uncle Clay in Boston having this big thoughts. I mean, and again, I think if this was easy, we wouldn't be having this podcast. You know, it's hard, and that's something you have to accept. But if you're looking for brand new, net new, big, innovative thoughts on any vector, doesn't matter. Supply chain, creative, I don't really care. Product, um, you need a different kind of brain in those moments. And then once you get it there, you need to optimize it. And that's what I'd call an MBA because they're awesome at that. They wake up sweating those details. I think it's a bit of timing and pacing in some ways. You throughout your career, I didn't know this. When you're young in your career, you don't know anything. You're working hard, you're smart, you're driven. You need experience, you need to solve problems and grow. That's your job for your first 10 years. Like do stuff, reflect, figure out if it's right for me on a more personal level. Figure is it right for the company? Are we growing? And do I have a jerky boss or not or whatever? Um, I think you don't understand these huge pendulum swings, and you're in the middle of a bunch of pendulum swings. Everything's moving in the wrong direction. The big pendulum swing we have was like, oh, bend towards creativity can solve everything. Swing towards optimization. Very few things win that are not balanced, fundamentally balanced, and that balance is really hard to achieve. I credit Linton at Best Buy. He had a very balanced team. There was a lot of internal pressure to win and capture mind share, but like we're all rolling in the same direction. I would click back to your like starting to work with a company called Commotion, who's coming on the scene. One of their former execs from Sprinkler, so they know a lot about connected commerce, a lot about how consumers behave, the role MarTech can play. They have a couple awesome thoughts in the middle of it. One is that search is dead. The other is discovery is broken. Okay, those are big statements. Search is not dead if I need to figure out where to get my Crocs broken. I need to find the places. Like, I need to find the closest place to get a new set of Crocs. Like specific problem, like Google sorted that, and that's why it's still the highest performing thing because it's the best signal of purchase intent. Period. It's fine, but that's not the only thing.
It's the best performing thing for Google's attribution. Like
Yeah.
it's
No, but
easy
I
to
mean, just
track.
sure.
I wouldn't say it's the best performing thing. And
When I have a specific problem to solve, where do I get
yeah,
allopurinol
yeah,
for
that's
my
correct.
gout? But like,
Yeah, it's very
specific
useful.
problem, specific solution. Odds that Google's going to come close in those first 10 answers,
Yeah,
pretty good.
yes, it is.
Not true that I can say about every brand ad I ever made. So like, I'm not anti Google; they're great. But so that's the first thing. But okay, now let's come into any um, ecom environment. How's the last search you did on pickyourfavoriteretailer.com? You're like, I'm looking for blue sweatshirt or whatever in triple XL that I can get tomorrow. Just type in search in any other thing besides Google.
I've
It's
never
a
searched for triple XL for anything for this little
well,
guy here. Mr. Scott
that's
Moore
I make for
may
bigger
have.
hugs. No, but like when you're looking for do it on a brand search. Search sucks,
Terrible.
sucks,
It's terrible.
horrible. It's broken.
That's right.
So figuring out that, and then the other side of that, the other like if you do like your infinite loop, discovery's a mess. We've outsourced it all to. It's like oh, best recommendation, word of mouth from a friend. Then do I trust a retail sales associate? Certain environments or not. Do I trust influencers? Kind of not. There's so many different ways to integrate all this stuff to create a fundamentally better purchase, searching, discovery, buying, delivery experience. And I think they're thinking really innovatively. And well, who are they? Okay, we're Sprinkler. We know all this stuff. Where are the problems in the world? Here. I mean, really interesting, I think. Commotion, they're called.
The discovery is interesting. I think the biggest issue I have, one of my favorite technology platforms is Spotify. It's awesome. The
Yeah.
ability to type in a song and for it to play. I mean, for somebody who's been audiophile for most of my life, that was an
No, I
incredible
love it. Yeah.
innovation. But discovery on it sucks. I cannot. It is a challenge to get out of the same 40 songs like I'm listening to classic rock radio like I did 20 years ago, right? Like
Yeah.
discovery is a challenge for the
Right.
internet and the algorithm. Maybe even on Instagram. I mean,
No, but
how
you
much
think about them. They
the
started
same
as
T-shirt?
business model information, but business model innovation. Apple, of all the things they've done, they messed up iTunes so remarkably, in my opinion. Like they had
It's terrible.
global dominant share, and some went wrong. But Spotify was like, oh, any song if Apple's innovation was 10,000 songs in your pocket, Spotify was 10,000 songs for $10 a month full rev bar. Like whatever. It was a business
Yeah.
model thing. I think they backed into it. It's funny. I'm thinking here. I see we're coming to time here. I think we may want to call this the Boil the Ocean podcast because I think we've covered 45 topics.
Well, Let me ask you one more question, the personal question. Why do you think we have become friends?
That was a great question. For whoever listening, for all your millions and millions of listeners, it's an interesting way to see how I solve problems. Like I had framed up a problem in my startup. We're like, okay, we need to do these kinds of things. I didn't have the money to have the data. I was used to being like king of the world at a big company. I'm like, well, what does Claritas think? And someone would tell me what Claritas thinks. We had shit for data. We were a broke little startup. I'm like, oh, how can I solve this problem differently? So I called Rob Buckner. I'm like, hey, I think I need a quick, efficient media agency who's like, I don't want to do a big one because I don't have any money. Who do you know who's doing the best work in the space? He's like, Coegi. Like, what's that? He connects me to y'all. Then Sean hands, you and Sean do that first meeting, and then you kind of became my guy. And we're trying to solve a very specific problem with very high stakes at a very early age in the company because every stake is important. And then you start to watch people think, and you're like, oh, hold on, this guy doesn't think like me, but he thinks like me. He knows different stuff, but he's an aggressive, creative problem solver. Every solution was different and not like you weren't shooting half court shots. You're trying left-handed hooks, right-handed hooks, like your own little game of horse there, but like, it was all practical. You're a grinder. So you're like, and you'd send me notes in the middle of the night, like I was thinking about this. What about that? Like that says you're emotionally invested in something you didn't need to be because we weren't even paying you enough. And then I think it's really critical for all of us, no matter whether we're innovators or marketers or whatever. You need thought partners who are not inside your core system. You need to be banging stuff against other people who see problems differently, so that you can then connect. Okay, oh, Ryan said that. That's not quite right, but God, that's better than how I was thinking. What does Brian think about that? Hold on, and then I think that's it. And then I think you're a high integrity guy. I think what you're doing with the last splash is perfect for right now. But that's not why. I'm not proud of my friends' accomplishments and what they do. I'm more proud of. I like to associate it with people, for who they are. And I think you're a vanguard thinker. You're very practical. I think it's the poker guy in you that like, okay, you're competitive, want to win. You use math where it needs to be used and instinct where it doesn't.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think that will be the only time I'm compared to a basketball player, considering I'm 5'8"
Yeah.
with my shoes on. So, um,
Well, as an old basketball player, I can't help go there. I think my final thought, I mean, this is kind of bringing it all together. Well, it's been interesting to think. I thought we were talking a little bit about the evolution of from collaboratory into covalent and how has covalent evolved. Because covalent, it's chemistry. It's your high school chemistry, a covalent bond. Two molecules come together. They find the magic in between. When the electrons are shared, it's a more powerful bond. And it's a great metaphor for so many things about what I believe in terms of growing, finding core truth, finding insights. I think what I'm starting to see is some commonalities that are different than I expected, which is, again, the heart of innovation is do, reflect. And when you reflect, figure out where's the heat, what's working, how can it be applied. When I think about Covalent as a creativity company, a marketing services company, an innovation company, I do believe we want to frame up the two kinds of get after it, you got stuck, what can we do? But below that, we focus kind of in 3 years. And these are areas I wouldn't have put together. One is innovative strategic partnerships. That matters. They're hard. They take time. And honestly, a lot of people, it's hard to put a FTE at any level, junior, senior, VP, on just creative, powerful strategic partnerships. You need help, and we're good at that. And you don't want to hire me at 22. You want to hire me at 55 because I know shit now. And I can do it faster. I can call the CMO myself. That's that. But that's innovative strategic partnerships. That was always the thought. The second thing it turns out we're pretty good at is innovative projects, which is like, okay, you are stuck. Like, what's the project itself? It's not necessarily about a partnership. It's a specific innovation problem. We're working with some of the most innovative companies in the world on that. That's the second thing. And increasingly, like this has been pushed in calendar year 2024. I think there's a massive gap in the market for helping to cultivate, support, and grow innovative people. So if you say, oh, Covalent, partnerships, projects, programs, and people. And I've been doing a lot of work with, okay, who are innovative people? Do you have to be this crazy left brain person who's, no, I don't think that. I think innovate the best teams I've been on, as productivity teams, you have a balance and the roles are clear. You still need the ideators, but it's not a brainstorm session sometimes can be the worst possible thing. And so I'm really concerned as I go forward with this company in the next couple of years. Are we doing things that never been done before in partnerships? Are we building and creating new propositions and products? And then I think I'm going to press more deeply into innovative people, meaning how do you connect them? How do you coach them? How do you support teams who need help there? And I think those will be the new three Ps of Covalent.
That I really like that third one, Scott. I don't think you've floated that to me previously, and the reason I like it is because it would take quite the unicorn to be able to have your brainstorm ideation, throwing spaghetti at the wall, maybe even sticky notes occasionally, but then have that same person also be the executor, be the one who is dealing with the technological, political, and cultural ramifications of a brand or a company. Like, that's a hard thing for
Yeah.
one individual to do. That individual certainly would need coaching if they're the selected person to be on innovation, or they need to bring other elements or other people, maybe fractions of other people together, actually to move that project forward.
Yeah, I mean, I could leave you with this thought or story. Like the best, I think you've done a good job in this boil the ocean conversation to bring it back. Leadership is the most important thing. We all think of ourselves as leaders. I'm fortunate to work. I've been fortunate to go to college where most people are smarter than me, and I'm a smart enough guy. I've been a decent leader over time. Some people think I'm really good. Others, you're like, not right. You always work with someone who's better than you, and the best leader create an environment where this can happen. And it was less that he had the best PowerPoints or speeches. It was how he helped support innovative things get done and had people's backs and leaned in and pushed you. The story is there's one year at Best Buy, I forget what was going on, but people forget we nearly died. Like that's how bad it was in call it
Yeah.
2010
No,
to
I
12.
remember. Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad. And so when that happens on any company, so what comes down from the CFO? It's like, well, 5-10% cuts, hairline across everyone, suck it up. And when we got this challenge, whatever year it was, me and the CFO of our division sat down and were like, this is so bad for our business to do a 5 or 10% cut. We are on fire. The company is burning, but we are on fire. I was skiing, and like when it always happens on vacation where the bad
Sure.
things happen. So I'm a big Breckenridge. We're like, this blows, and we had a little tantrum, which is also helpful to do. And we're like, screw this. Nope, let's not cut. Let's show up with 20% more revenue growth that we'll sign up for, they can put into our thing, which is a nice thing to say, but hard to do.
Yeah.
And the other leader was like, all right, we're going to go after this. Like they may make us make the cuts, but we're not going to, our first deck is not going to be, here's how we're cutting marketing 10%. It's not. We're going to say we might need a little more money, but we're going to deliver whatever, extra $100 million, whatever it was. That's interesting emotional reaction by the team. What's interesting back to what you saw there is like, oh, technical problem. Political, I'd say it was this one leader's willingness to take this very controversial time. Everything is cutting it, and we're saying no. We want more money. And then culturally, we had to set up how do you create the innovation culture and innovation tactics in about 2 weeks to show up for this badass meeting. And so we set up these triads. And again, the triads were a marketer, a tech person, and a finance person, knowing that in the end, the fourth I don't know if it's the fourth leg of the stool. I don't know if it's not really supposed to be three. Fourth leg of the chair is a GM. That we did more productive work. So what do marketers do? They're like, hey, consumers want this. Like, why don't we just do this? Like, why can't we do this? A little complainy. That's what great marketers do. Coders and tech people are like, well, you can't do that, but I can make it do this. And the marketer's like, well, that's what I said. Not really, but that's how marketers are. And then you got the finance person. She's like, huh, well, if we got that to 20 units per store per week, that's a thing. The things that came back from those, 12, 15, and we did it across the whole division, 15, 20 teams, set up in teams of three, had a week, specific problems. And this was more financially driven, but we're like, look, what do you know? What's working? How do we extend? Where can we win? How do we get to an extra 100 million column? That was some of the best innovation at scale that worked. Of course, we didn't get full relief from whatever cut we had to make, but we did the right thing for the business. We did the right thing for our team. We did the right thing for the company. And instead, so they cut the ad budget 5%. Fine, you can always get by with 5% less ad budget. But we brought new propositions to market, and it was in that chaos that some of the bigger my walkout working might have come out of that. It's one of the bigger value props, maybe that Super Bowl promotion but teams smashing together in those lenses is really good. And that's innovation, I think, at scale that can be done anywhere.
You had a time pressure, it had to be done now, and you brought finance on board. And marketers, for whatever reason, are bad at bringing finance on board, of really giving them a legitimate seat with them to build something. So that, for whatever reason, I haven't seen that happen. Maybe it's just because I've been in agency world and it happens at brands more, but
Well, great. Hey, thanks a lot. Again, one more plug for Last Splash. I think your insights are clean and clear. I think you're designed to go do innovative work in a very important vertical right now. And I think you've got a grounding in, you're unafraid to look at a problem, you're unafraid to think of a good solution, but also you're standing on a stack of 20 years of experience solving real problems at scale. And I think that matters. So I'm a big, big fan of what you got going and look forward to staying friends and growing our businesses together.
well, thanks for everything, Scott. I truly appreciate it, and we'll have you on again next year, and we'll continue the conversation.
But
Thanks very
we'll
much.
get from the ocean down to maybe like Cape Cod Bay. We can
Yeah,
pick
maybe we
one.
can. Yeah, but
We'll do
I got
innovation
a
writ
feeling
large.
we're ocean people, Scott.
I think that's the problem. I hope people are like, will you guys shut up with all the isms? So.